In this week's Property Breaking News, Andrew Roberts and I take a look at some of the news and stories in the papers that affect you as savvy property entrepreneurs. In this episode, we're looking at how students can now get 100% mortgages. We're having a look at how the London office market is bouncing back. And we're also going to take a look at those nasty London councils who are having a big hissy fit about all the new permitted development rights and what they think they're going to do about it. That's all coming up. So if you're new to this channel, don't go away without subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you get notified as soon as we upload. Also, smash that like button and join the discussion on anything we're saying in the comments below. Good morning, as always, to Andrew Roberts. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning, Ranjan. What a fine weekend we've had, and what brilliant press articles we've got to share this week.
Absolutely. It's a tough job keeping it down to just 2 or 3. But let's just dive straight into it. So, I mean, oh boy, do I wish this was available when I was a student. 100% mortgages for students to get on the property ladder. Andrew, tell us a little bit about this this story. What are your views are?
Well, if I start by saying I actually did this with my children, and I'll tell you how later on in the article. But this article is about 3 building societies who are offering 100% mortgages to students. That is the Bath, the Loughborough, and the Vernon Building Society.
Yeah, so those are the building societies, not the universities.
Absolutely. Yes. But what I like is it's great PR for the Vernon Building Society. I'd never heard of them before. So well done, Vernon.
Yeah, well done, Vernon. Yes. Let us know if you have a Vernon mortgage in the comments below. I've never heard of them either.
But coming back to the story, basically, if you're a student and you don't want to pay some landlord rent, then you can go out and buy a house of your own, and the Building Society will give you a 100% mortgage, provided that you can rent it to 2 or 3 friends who will cover your costs.
And of course, provided that mummy and daddy will guarantee the loan.
Yes, mother and father, like with most student ASTs, act as guarantor. This time they're acting as a guarantor on a mortgage. Now, this is quite unique and quite a challenge to the student marketplace, which has been undergoing in a lot of towns, a lot of pressure from the purpose-built student block operators, and they've been throwing them up across the country.
You're right. And I mean, I think there are some caveats here. Although you can do it, you will need to check what the demand is for sort of shared accommodation in normal houses in that particular student town. Because many student towns have had lot of investment in big build-to-rent schemes. And the great advantage of living in halls like that is the social life. You've got hundreds of students and all milling around and everything like that. That's pretty competitive. I think the other fly in the ointment is, of course, in areas where the councils have Article 4s, mandatory Article 4s on HMOs. So that will be a bit difficult to do there. And I think they've actually said they won't lend in those areas.
Correct. I mean, you've got the Article 4s, but I think the other key thing that if you're a student and thinking of doing this, you have to accept and acknowledge that you are becoming a landlord and responsible for about 186 different pieces of legislation that you need to deliver on to your tenant customers, even though they might be your mates that you're sharing with. So this isn't plain sailing.
I think that's the problem. I mean, just scrolling through the comments as you do, you know, the Daily Mail readers, of course, are very negative and saying it's all hilarious and it's all going to go pot. But I don't think so. I think if you are savvy enough and use this in the correct way, it can be exceptionally advantageous. I think there is one issue though. The problem is really renting to your mates. You know, can I have a discount this month? Or you start to get people taking the liberties. So it really just teaches people to maintain certain lines and boundaries.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I mean, I did say at the start of this article that I have personal experience on this, in that my daughter went to university and we did exactly the same using one of the named building societies. We actually took out a mortgage for her, and she rented the surplus rooms to uh, mates, and at the end of it, she also had a very nice capital uplift on selling the property. So not only did she fund herself through university and have no student fees to pay because they were paid for by her friends, not only did she
What are
live for
friends
free,
for?
well, exactly, she lived for free, she ate for free, and made a little bit of an uplift at the end as well, after all of the costs. Now, she is very lucky in that her father does understand lettings and management of properties. So I was the hands-on element of that operation for her. But it's a great way of funding yourself through uni if you're smart enough and your parents are able to offer you a guarantee.
I mean, I mean, it's absolutely a great strategy. I mean, this wasn't available when I was a student. I would have loved to have done this. I couldn't persuade my parents to. I did try to persuade them on student lettings, but they thought, tenants and all of this was risky and all of that sort of stuff. So I had to wait until I graduated, and then I bought a property and rented out rooms in it and stuff like that. But if you are a student and you're thinking, hey, this is a great idea, I want to do something in property, but mum and dad can't give me a guarantee, then there are other options and opportunities. I mean, a classic strategy is to look at rent to rent. Now, if you're savvy with property, you need to clue yourself up with all the intricacies of it. But the basic principle is you rent a property from a landlord at a monthly rent, and then you sublet it out to your friends on a room by room basis, and you basically make a little margin which covers your rental and all of that as part of the deal. And if you combine that with a lease option, of course, you can have the option to buy it when you graduate. So there are other ways of playing the game if you just clue yourself up and get the knowledge.
Absolutely. So it's not about going to university and learning your specialist subject. It's about funding yourself through university, learning how to be an entrepreneur at the same time as learning the skills of the professional trade that you're studying for.
Absolutely. So, if you're a student and you're looking to get to university, you want to find out more about uh, perhaps getting on the property ladder or getting into property while you're doing your studies, let us know if you have any questions in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe as well, because we put out plenty of videos on that sort of thing. Next article that grabbed our attention was the office market. Now, we have had so much doom and gloom about offices, and are we all working at home in our underwear and all of that sort of stuff? Is anyone ever going to go back to the office? And I think people will. By the way, there's an interesting, I don't know whether you saw this, Andrew, there's an interesting side story in one of the American newspapers. I think it was the Wall Street Journal or something, but they did a survey of people working from home, and they've found an alarming increase of the number of people taking two jobs. Can you believe it? So they're basically working at home and taking two goddamn salaries from two employers. And so they're doing well out of it, but I don't think that's exactly what the employers had in mind. No, I mean...
Isn't that what Rishi Sunak set up last year with the furlough scheme? Your one
Well,
employer can furlough you on 80%. You can go and get a second job.
That's another story altogether. But anyway, we'll get back to the video in just a moment. What is the most exciting opportunity in property right now? And that is repurposing defunct commercial buildings to residential use. Now, most people don't really know where to start, what to look for, and how to exploit these opportunities. And that's why I've prepared 90 minutes of free training for you to get you started on this wonderful journey. You can register for this free training at property-workshop.com. Join me on that free training, and I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of the video. What's all this about then? The London market in particular is rebounding, but we're seeing a a real polarity, a real divergence between the types of offices that people want.
Yeah, well, the London market is splitting down fault lines. And I think this is a big article here that I enjoyed reading at the weekend. And when you scratch beneath the surface of it and you start going back to property developers who are developing commercial real estate office space, their share prices are spiraling upwards. 15 to 30% is the average range that these property developers' share prices are going up. Now, when you compare that to the office vacancy rates, and if we go back to before COVID, just at the point where Brexit was announced, we had a 5% London office vacancy rate. It's now running at 9%. So you would challenge, why is the share price rising so rapidly? Now, I found this interesting because I did a little bit of research here. And one of your favorite social media channels, and for those of the audience out there, Ranjan is a big TikTok fan, and you'll find him doing many a dance on TikTok. So,
Well, I've just started out on TikTok, and I'll leave a link in the down there. Please follow on that as well. But carry on, Andrew.
TikTok have just taken some prime central London real estate new build, as have JLL, the property company, and Travis Smith, the law firm, have also taken prime London real estate that is new build. But what we're actually seeing is the old office space that's not fit for purpose, perimeter trunking, without modern air conditioning,
Without any air conditioning, most of them.
without any air conditioning, without demountable stud partition walls to make the office space flexible. That space is sticking in the marketplace. Now, there's an interesting quote, and I can't remember, I think it was Savills put a quote out, and it was to do with the fact that investors are hunting for returns, and the returns they're hunting for and the statements that are being made is, we did well in the last market crash back in 2008, buying up surplus London office space. And we anticipate we're going to make a shed load again because the market will come back. What we're also seeing is anecdotal evidence of the Asian and American investors coming back to the London marketplace. And it's predicted that once travel bans lift, that will kickstart again that marketplace. But I think where this leads to is an opportunity that you and I sees very regularly, which is the use class E buildings, which are offices, converting them under permitted development MA into residential, where there is growing demand for quality flats and terraced properties.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a couple of things there that are worth drawing out. There's actually a fundamental shift in the way people, or when I say people, I mean large companies, funds, and all of that, invest in office blocks, basically freehold office buildings. Now, in the old days, people would only invest in office buildings, office accommodation, if they were forward let. And that's because tenancies were for 5, 10, 15-year durations, long leases, FRIs. The thing is now is, yes, people want all this flexible space, this trendy space, but it's often on shorter terms. So like 1 year, 2 year leases and the like, license agreements. And in that case, what's happening is these investors are not necessarily looking to forward let, but they're actually speculatively acquiring these blocks with the predicting that they are going to find tenants for them. And that's a fundamental shift in the way funds and things actually invest in office accommodation.
Totally. Totally. Well, the other interesting factor, I mean, we've covered this in a number of our prior videos and cross-referenced the statements made by the Bank of England about there being 250 billion locked up in savings. And a lot of commercial agents, and you and I talk to commercial agents on a daily basis, are saying that investors have got pockets full of money that they're trying to find homes for. And this comes back to, and I know it's your area of expertise, the economics of this, but it comes back to supply and demand, the value of the pound being devalued through the printing of all the money. And now people are looking to hedge against the inflation or deflation of the pound in their pocket. So,
So that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense to invest in this because, of course, it's going to be higher yield. Well, it should be higher yielding because it's a newer building and you just get more rents from a newer building and that kind of thing. But that also means it's this twin track that we alluded to in the beginning, that some
yeah,
offices are just not fit for modern day purpose. Now, whenever you see an office building go up, you probably, when you look at the construction of the floors, it looks as though it's designed for giants. They all go up with at least 3.5 meter floor, sort of between one floor and the other, at least 3.5 meters. And that's because they have suspended floors to allow for all the structured cablings, and they need a suspended ceiling to allow for the air conditioning and ducting and all of that. And people want that higher ceiling anyway. So you tend to find that a 4-story modern building is far taller than a 4-story building in the 70s and the 80s. So people
yeah,
don't want those buildings anymore, but those 70s and 80s buildings are perfect for residential conversion.
absolutely, absolutely. And from a conversion point of view, you don't want a 3.5 meter ceiling height in a residential building because your EPC and the airspace that you're going to heat is going to be huge. So the older buildings, which are not really fit for office use, are actually perfect for residential use and purposing. Now, I know not everybody agrees with us on this, do they?
Well, no, not. I was just going to say that we forgot the main reason. You know, the main reason why you need high ceilings in a modern office.
Go on then.
Well, you got to have a ping pong table in the breakout area, so you need the ceiling height for those slam dunk shots. That's what it's all about, isn't it? But no, I mean, this is all logical stuff that we've been discussing. We can see that these trends play out. It's the grade A, newer type of office building that's in demand, and the older ones are lying empty. There's no demand for those. We've
Yeah.
got PD rights that allow these to be converted. It's all logical stuff, but there are a group of people for whom really logic is not really in their vocabulary. And I'm talking about the good old local authorities, aren't we?
Well, I dare I say it. I mean, the local authorities can drive us nuts.
Just move
I
your
mean,
head 1 second, because no, to that side. There, London councils
the
to
other way.
ban new PDR. I mean, can you believe that as a headline from Property Week?
Yeah, I mean that is a fantastic headline. I mean, it's an interesting bit of research that was undertaken by Property Week and statements taken from each of the London boroughs. Now, a lot of them don't actually understand what the new system is.
Well, that's nothing new.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe some of the statements that have been made that we're going to have a blanket Article 4 across the whole borough because we don't want our empty shops, as in the picture, our empty shops being repurposed to bring the high street back to life. We don't want our offices converting. We want to keep jobs. And some of them are quoting the numbers of jobs that it will save by protecting these spaces. But we've just identified they're not fit for purpose.
It is very interesting, of course, that most of these councils have got state-of-the-art, swanky, modern office buildings with the trendiest of office furniture, all paid for by your council tax, by the way. But they are saying that, the new buildings are okay for them, but everyone else can slum it in these old buildings, which are unsuitable for purpose.
Yeah, totally. And what incenses me more is the people who've been putting the comments in on this new permitted development right haven't actually read the legislation, because the government legislation in the GDPO, the General Permitted Development Order, and in the National Planning Policy Framework 2021 are actually stating it must be limited to as few buildings as possible if an Article 4 is introduced.
That is a
Now,
good point. That is a good
Rob,
point. I mean, I think people might have missed that. I mean, so just to re-clarify for people that might be a little bit confused about what we're talking about, the government have introduced all these fantastic PD rules on 1st of August, which allow repurposing of defunct commercial buildings to residential use. I've got a webinar on it, so you can register. I'll leave a link in the bottom as well. That tells you all about it. But the thing is, some councils don't like it. Well, no, let me rephrase that. All councils don't like it. It's been put in by central government. So what they do is there's a mechanism by which they can apply to opt out of these PDR rules, which is called an Article 4. Now, under the previous PD rules that existed before August the 1st, it was councils abused the Article 4s, in my view, by saying we're going to opt out of this article, this permitted development, by having a borough-wide blanket ban. But now the government have fought back. They've got wise to this, and they're saying for these new rules, you've got to put up a pretty strong business case for each building that you want to opt out of the rules for. And that's going to be quite tough to achieve. That's basically what we're talking about, isn't it? And clearly by the comments from the councils, they haven't got to grips with this.
They haven't got a Scooby-Doo, without being rude, because the Article 4 that they're talking about is applied to a use class of a building, and we're talking a use class E. Now, for the audience's benefit, a use class E could be a shop, it could be a restaurant, it could be a gym or a doctor's surgery or a creche. Now, an Article 4, or even an office, an Article 4 blanket across the whole of a borough means that everything that's of a commercial use pretty much is taken out of the permitted development right, Class MA. Now, it might be that there's no need. The doctors have relocated down the road. A developer has built a purpose-built new GP surgery. The GPs historically used to occupy, shall we say, large houses. That house can now be brought back into use as housing stock. But the council is saying you can't do that by introducing an Article 4. No doctor is ever going to go in there. No office is going to go in there. No shop is going to go in there. So you've now got a defunct building decaying in the borough.
That's absolutely correct. And I think the market has moved on. I mean, looking at some of the councils that do have them, Islington, Westminster, Hammersmith, Fulham, and all of that, a lot of the you've got to remember that when they actually got their Article 4s in the first place, it was around about 2015. And what these are protecting is not just large offices, but offices above shops. You get loads of shopping parades with small, dingy offices above them. Now, in 2015, serviced offices were in their infancy. Now, boroughs like Islington, Kensington, Chelsea, Westminster, all of these sort of places, Camden, they're littered with brand new serviced office buildings. So no one is going to want to be in a, just 3 people working above a shop in an office. When you can be in a swanky serviced office building with a ping pong table in the breakout area, where you could, meet lots of other businesses and all of that and work together. These sort of sites did not exist in 2015 in those sort of locations. So there's no way they can just say, we're going to, just renew what we had in 2015, because it's a different landscape now.
Yeah. Well, I guess you'll be relocating to one of these swanky new offices soon, Ranjan, from your office above the shop.
Yes, exactly. We'll try to get a ping pong table in there, and as long as we can do that, it'll suffice. Sorry,
my good friend.
I think the key thing is, and I know you've had a chance to read through the riveting document, which is the National Planning Policy Framework, whatever it is, thingy. And that said specifically about the criteria that they now need to follow to actually get an Article 4 implemented in their local area. And that's quite different to before. Can you just summarise what that is?
Yeah, well, before they could basically say geographically, this catchment area within our borough or the whole borough has an Article 4, which is removal of a planning right for, say, office to residential conversion or retail to residential to protect certain areas. Now, the new rules state it must be the smallest possible area affecting the fewest number of buildings. Now, if you read the statements made by these councils, we're introducing a borough-wide. Well, actually, that doesn't meet with what the government's national policy is. Now, an Article 4 can be introduced, but it requires approximately 12 months of consultation. It requires a Secretary of State sign-off. And the Secretary of State will turn around to them and say, guys, did you not read the rules we wrote? Which buildings on which streets? And these councils are just looking blanket. So they haven't read the rules yet.
That means that's got to, I mean, to win an Article 4, if you want to word it like that, the business case they've got to draw up is quite extensive in terms of the data. And it's at a building per building level. So if there is a 1980s building or a 1970s building next to a modern, a grade A type building, then they have completely different supply demand dynamics. So you can't treat them both under the same rules.
Absolutely. So it's going to be fun to actually watch how this one evolves. And I say fun, I mean, if you stay tuned here, Ranjan and I will update you on how these rules update. But I can't see councils making the headway that they're hoping to make borough-wide, because that completely goes against national policy.
I mean, the thing is, there will be a bit of a Barney about this. The councils ain't going to get their way totally, and perhaps the government won't get their way totally. And there will be some element of these PD rules being amended. And by amended, I mean the powers and the things that you are able to do right now kind of clipped a little bit and held back, pegged back a little bit. But that will take 2 to 3 years to actually play out. And that means that there is so much first mover advantage. I think the key thing for me about this Property Week article is by the comments, by the spokespeople's, by the spokesperson's remarks from each council, it is absolutely clear that the councils haven't got a clue what you can and can't do under these new PD rules. The market generally hasn't got a clue. So it's first mover advantage time.
Absolutely is. And I sort of am looking at this as huge opportunity, because they might put in their request for an Article 4, but I can see a lot of them getting shown the door, or a size 12 boot and told, sorry, your homework's not good enough. Go do it again if you want to pass the test. And I think that is what we're going to see, is a size 12 boot coming from the Secretary of State towards a lot of local authorities.
And if you've got a size 12 boot, you've just got to put it straight in the door of a particular Class E site and get in there and have some fun. Because as I keep saying, I think we've got a 2 to 3 year golden opportunity to have a lot of fun with this. We're going to be back again next week with our weekly roundup. If you want to find out more about how you can capitalize on this PD, perimeter development, gold rush opportunity that's happening, unfolding right now, I'm running a series of 90-minute free masterclasses on this, and you can join me on those. There's a link in the description below and at the bottom of your screen. Join us next week for more news roundup. Andrew, any closing comments for the viewers?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the look on some councillors' faces when they are told by the Secretary of State, go away. But for me, I'm so looking forward to next week's article. I'm looking for a rant, and a little rant that I would like to have at this point is brilliant video on the Reba. If you haven't watched Ranjan's prior video, that was a great little rant about a special interest group, and I think it was well deserved. Watch out, there's one coming on Rick soon, I think, as well.
No, and you know, this week I've got a busy week. This week I'm putting in my first Class G PD application this week under the new rules that have just been introduced. So that'll be quite exciting to wade through that. I'll keep you updated on that. I'll tell you a lot more about that in subsequent videos. Andrew, any highlights for the week?
Well, for me, I'm looking to hear some positive news on a couple of offers that have gone in. And again, we'll keep you updated with some really exciting projects we've got coming up soon.
And one of those is a little JV we're working on. So we'll keep you updated on that as well. Okay, that's all for us this week. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't go away without subscribing. See you again in the next video. Bye for now.